Hi, I'm Anders Hamilton. I'm one of the studio managers here at BKLYN CLAY. I'm someone you can get in touch with for demonstrations for any of the equipment here in the studio. You can also contact me for approval on outside clay and glazes or any other technical questions you have. If you can't find me in person, you can reach me over email, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So now I'll be demonstrating the spray booth, and the first step is loading the gun with glaze. So all of our glazes here are mixed to a consistency that is appropriate for spraying glaze. If you think it might need water, ask me or another technician, and we can take a look and see if it's necessary. But for the most part, if you mix it up thoroughly, make sure there's no chunks in the glaze, you should be good to go for spraying. So I'm just going to give it a good mix with the scrubber, make sure that I'm scraping the bottom and getting anything that's settled out back into the mixture. So this is the spray gun. The canister just unscrews. And the compressor hose attaches to the gun. There's a little tab that gets pulled down, push the gun in, and release that tab. Before I begin spraying, the most important thing is to have this shelf positioned about a foot into the spray booth. That's going to help with ventilating all the dust that's going to be created from spraying. And then, so I have my pot on a banding wheel so that I can turn and rotate it as I spray. It takes somewhere between 3 and 5 coats to get a thick, adequate shell of glaze on the work. And the baffle filter should also be in place. And I would recommend a dust mask, or if you're doing a lot of spraying, if this is like a process that you use quite a bit with your work, you might want to get a respirator as well. And if you don't have a dust mask, we can supply you with one. Before I start spraying, there are 2 switches on this wall. One is for the compressor and one is for the ventilation, so you'll hear those kick on. I'm going to spray about 3 to 5 layers, rotating it as I go. So now I'm going to do what's actually the most important part of using the spray booth, which is cleaning it thoroughly. When spray booths get dirty, they don't filter as well. So if we keep it clean, we're also keeping the rest of the studio clean and keeping the air quality at a healthy level. So to clean the booth, I'm going to remove the metal shelf and the banding wheel, carry that over to the sink. That's the best way so I can spray it and really scrub it well. And then I'm going to sponge down the entire booth so that it's clean and ready to use for the next person. So I've got a bucket and a sponge, and I'm going to do a couple passes to make sure that there's no glaze residue anywhere in the booth. For cleaning the gun, the first thing I'm going to do is just empty the glaze back into the right glaze bucket, and then I'll carry it over to the sink for a more thorough cleaning. So I'll pull out the metal shelf and the banding wheel, and I'll carry that over to the sink. So I'm going to sponge out everything. There's a trough here that'll collect the wastewater, and there's a ball valve down here that I just want to make sure is closed so that I don't start leaking out of there as I clean. So I've got a bucket of clean water. I'm just going to start sponging it out and sort of squeegeeing like everything down into the trough. Okay, so now I'm going to position my bucket under the ball valve and just sort of run the sponge down to get all that residue out. I'll close the valve. I've got another bucket of fresh water so that I can clean my sponge a bit and just give everything one more wipe down with a dry sponge to just collect any remaining glaze. And now it's ready for someone else to spray. So we'll head over to the sink, clean out the gun, and clean the shelf. Alright, so to clean out the gun, I'm just going to unscrew the canister, run some clean water through there. Fill the canister with about 1/8 inch of water so that I can go back to the spray booth and just spray some clean water through the gun. And that'll make sure that any remaining glaze is completely out of there. The banding wheel as well is usually easier to just clean at the sink, especially if you've been spraying for a while. It can really build up. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do is just go back to the spray booth and spray some clean water through the gun just to make sure I've got all the glaze residue out of there. Okay, so shelf. And then I'm going to turn the compressor on and the vent on, and I'm just going to spray this clean water into a sponge so that I don't dirty the spray booth. So any remaining water I'll just dump out into my waste bucket, and now the spray booth is ready for the next user.